So why don't you stick around and we'll make one? I'm pretty happy with the sketch I've got here for this turtle. This lure is going to be just a little over 3 inches long, so it's 3 inches from the tip of the nose to the back of the shell here. And I'm thinking that's going to be a good size for bass. It's not so big that it scares them away, but it's not so small that you can't really see it. I want to have some of their legs sticking out a little bit, the tail sticking out a little bit, and of course the head out. If we look at the side view here, this line is the water line. So when I get to ballasting this thing, I want it to look like a turtle that's just sitting on the surface getting a breath of air, okay? So slightly tail down, nose up above the water line. I'm attaching my line tie here just so that I can move it forward a little bit. There's not really, I don't think, going to be a whole lot of action to speak of on this lure. That's not the way I'm fishing it. The way I'm fishing it is to cast it out near some brush, some cover, and then just kind of retrieving it along that cover. But mostly, I'm anticipating strikes as it suspends and just hangs in the water. But I will be able to twitch it a little bit here and there just to give it a little bit of movement. I'm thinking a couple of treble hooks, one at the front, one at the back, give me a good chance for success on a hookup ratio. Haven't decided whether or not I'm going to have these arms and legs move at all. I'm not really sure. I kind of don't think they need to. Like I said, this is really just supposed to be fished in a suspended, relaxed state. I'm thinking that a bass would see that and think that it was an easy meal. Bass like things that are trapped up against the surface. There's nowhere for it to go. And it seems, if it's just hanging there in the water breathing, then it might seem like an easy target. So I'm going to carve this out of poplar, just because I have a lot of poplar around and it'll be nice and durable. I also don't need a whole lot of buoyancy. Poplar has a little bit less buoyancy than some woods, and so I don't have to use quite as much lead to get it to suspend exactly like I want. But more than that, I want it to just be really durable so that it'll last a long time. Now that the glue has dried on my block of wood. I took it over to the sander and I sanded these two sides flat, and I'm going to trace the side profile first here. So we want to save all the pieces from that cut, and we're going to put them back together kind of like a puzzle here. Now that I've got this figured out, I'm going to kind of hot glue this back together a little bit, sort of temporarily. I'm going to keep this flat side right here on the bottom. And we're going to trace our top profile on. Now you can see right here where I've cut up where the nose is. So let's line that nose up like so, right? We'll just when you get to this part and you're ready to pull it apart with this hot glue, if it's still a little hard to remove, you can put it in the microwave for like 30 seconds. That's what I did. Just to soften the glue up enough to where you can get this off. What we're left with is a very blocky turtle, but we'll start shaping that up here pretty soon. Got the tail in pretty good shape here. I'm liking the way that is. But anytime you've got a thin, potentially breakable piece hanging out there, you want to strengthen that as soon as possible. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of super glue on that. This is that super thin Instacure stuff because it'll soak in really well. And I'm just going to work some in around that tail just to make it a little bit stronger. waterproofing this with polyurethane, so I need a wire tie in the front so that I can hang it and let it drip. As you can see on my original sketch, I was going to put it right here, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it down in the neck a little bit, and then I'll drill it straight into the body part there. So moving this line tie where I have serves two purposes. One, this acts kind of as a dowel in the neck, which will strengthen that neck and strengthen the head altogether. And also, I'll be pulling from that area instead of way up here on the head, which will reduce the stress on that neck. I'm going to be using this polyurethane. Of course, we need to make a couple of hook hangers here with the .041 stainless steel lock wire. I'll show you where I'm at with the turtle. I did put a second coat of polyurethane on there, and that has obviously dried and is ready to go. So it's nice and waterproofed. I'm going to cut these two hook hangers to a 1/2 inch length. Alright, and as you can see, we're going to place them in the back and in the front here on the center line. I do want to put some tape on my drill bit here just to make sure that I don't accidentally get too deep. So that's just a tiny little bit more than 1/2 inch, okay? Alright, we'll let that set up and then we can ballast this thing. I've gone on ahead and added a couple of hooks on split rings. So the way this lure is going to work, let's go back to the sketch real quick. I'll show you the original plan. This line represents the water line, so I want his nose sticking out of the water and maybe just a little bit of his shell sticking out, okay? That's the goal. So let's take a look at what we've got right now and see how it sits, and then from there we can hot glue some of these lead weights onto it and get it balanced just right. Our turtle in. Okay, so we need a lot of weight in the tail. It's floating pretty evenly, but what we want it to do is kind of do this number. So we're going to need to add quite a bit of weight, actually, in the tail. These weights over here are made with a 5/8 inch Forstner bit, 1/2 inch Forstner bit, and then 3/8 Forstner bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of take a look at what's going to fit best here. And I think the biggest I'm going to want to go is a 1/2 inch. Let's take a look at the 5/8. Yeah, the 5/8 is just going to be too big. It's going to disrupt too much of what I've carved. So, but I know I need a lot of weight, so I'm gonna start with this 1/2 inch. Let me make sure that's really good and dry. I'm going to get a couple of weights that are roughly the same mass here. These two. I'm going to get these two. And I'm going to put a dot of glue, hot glue. Here and here. And we'll just sort of temporarily tack those on there. Let that cool a minute. Let's take a look at what that does. Well, I kind of feel like that's the right amount of weight. We're very close, but we might need to move it actually a bit forward. The beautiful part about this method is that you can just break these off, glue them in a little bit different place or change the size and get pretty close to what your weight needs to be before you drill holes into it. So I'm gonna mess with that a little bit off camera, and once I find the final configuration, then I'll get back with you. Alright, I think I've struck upon the final configuration that gives me the orientation that I'm looking for in the water. I wound up downsizing these two 1/2 inch weights and moving them forward, as you can see, and then I added just a tiny bit more weight to get it perfect in the water. And I'll show you how that sits in the water here in just a second. If you're new to the channel and you're interested in how I make these and how this whole weighting system works, I go into it in a little bit more detail in my other video on making a wooden 7-inch minnow lure. So if you want to, you can check that out. I'll put a link up here so that you can see that. Alright, so as you can see, this looks a lot like a small turtle just relaxing on the surface of the water, getting a breath of air, looking around. There's a little bit of shell sticking out here, you can see. I'd say a tasteful amount of shell, not too much. Not enough to get demonetized. But I'm happy with the way that that's sitting in the water, so let's go ahead and drill our holes and put the lead in. Alright, this first one, this 3/8 inch one that's going to be in the middle here in the back, is not much, okay? It's very small, so let's just barely go in there. Shallow, shallow. Enough to get a few drops in there and then cover it, okay? That's a pretty sizable amount, so let's take a look at that in relation. Okay, it's going to be a full depth of that bit. Alright, another note to keep in mind before I put the lead in is I tend to err on the side of putting just a little bit less in there. Especially on a topwater like this, for a couple of reasons. One, I'm getting rid of some of the buoyancy that I had on when I had these glued to the bottom. I had that extra wood there that's not gone, so that reduces the buoyancy some. The other thing is when I put the clear coat and paint and all that other stuff on there, it's going to reduce the buoyancy slightly more on top of that. So it's better to put slightly less than what you had initially glued onto the bottom, just to be on the safe side. I'd rather it float a little bit too high than to sink, right? I do wear my goggles and a mask because this does put fumes out that you don't want to breathe. You want to make sure that this thing is completely dry too, because if this hot lead hits water, bad things happen. Finally, we're ready to paint this guy. Of course, I'm going to prime this with opaque white. I'm ready to put my foundational color down, and what I'm going to use for that is a pale yellow. And I've mixed equal parts of opaque yellow and opaque white. Probably too much, but I don't want to run out. Alright, the next color I'm going to use is a transparent light brown. Kind of got a little globby there and there, so what I'll probably do is go back with the yellow, paint over it, and then try again. Wicked Detail Moss Green. Next color I'm going to spray on is kind of a light, bright green, and this is 15 drops opaque green, 2 drops opaque white, and 5 drops of opaque yellow. Now here is my acknowledgement right here, right now, that this looks pretty awful. But if you'll stick with me, I'm going to do some hand painting over this. This is really just sort of the background base layer, and it just gives me something to paint over. So let's get started on hand painting. So I'm just going to come in here with a pen and add a few more little thin lines. My dark green paint is so dark that I think this black pen will kind of blend alright with it. It gives me a little bit more detail. It looks a little bit cartoony. It looks a lot cartoony, but I'm going to paint over that and put some more layers with the airbrush over it. And so this is really just sort of not a background, I wouldn't say, but a mid-level color. And so we're going to build upon that to give it a little bit more realistic look. We're going to put a little bit of detail raw umber. And basically what I'm doing with this is I'm just trying to bring all those colors together and mute them a little bit, because that's very loud and very contrasty. I'm ready to paint the red ear, and I'm gonna start, I think, with a base of fluorescent orange, and then I'm gonna try and tame it down with some opaque red and some opaque yellow. If you like the content I'm putting out, please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and give me a thumbs up so I can make more of the stuff you want to see. Also, feel free to leave a comment. I welcome your feedback and appreciate all of your support. Thanks again, everyone, for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.